Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
Cube Monk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Track your goods with our advanced GPS system. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Insured Nomads provides protection and peace of mind with health insurance, travel insurance, group, or tailored insurance for the globally mobile. Visit us at insurednomads.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
This is Ed Cohen, a broadcast host on Global TV Talk Show, and we're here for part 4 of assignment protocols, getting to better outcomes, best practices on managing assignments for corporations. Our leader is Jeff Houck, and great assistance by MIrela. Marin or Marin? Which is better for you?
I will accept both, Ed.
All right, great. With Zinga and old friend Michael. Thank you very much, Michael Deane, and from Toronto area. And MIrela's from Toronto, and Jeff is in Calgary today. And I happen to be in Palm Desert, California today. So I'm going to read something here real quick and jump off. We've had 3 of the 4-part series here on outcomes for business and assignees and success contributions. Jeff Houck is our leader. This show today is about the denouement. In other words, how do you use the talents, the new skills that the assignee picked up and the contributions that the person has made to the corporation? What do you do with that person? What do you do to reinvest? So I'm not an expert at all. I'm just a broadcaster. Jeff Houck, you're the expert. Take over, please.
Good morning. Maybe one among others on our panel and through our series here. Been great discussions that we've had over these last 3, and looking forward to today as well. Unfortunately, Kirsten Parmar, who is the HRBP that we have had on for a number of sessions, got called into a meeting today and is not able to make this session. So from the corporate side, I think MIrela and myself are going to be able to chat about our experiences and the importance of some of these pieces. Today, we are going to talk about repatriation, how it is internally with the business. And then Michael's going to speak to us about actually some of those tactical pieces in the host country of how to close that down. And then he's going to get back into us the super important piece, which is often overlooked, is that cultural reintegration in the host country. So I'd like to get started with talking about role exploration and positioning in the home location. And I'd like to share this with MIrela and lead off by saying, you know, as Kirsten had stated earlier in sessions, right at the very start, when we had conversations in session 1, we talked about really that role definition and the right fit of that employee going out on an assignment. And just as important now is we have to look at role definition and the right fit when that individual is coming back to the organization. They're changed after their assignment. They have a breadth of skill. They've developed, they're elevated in their thought and their abilities. And it's most important that prior to re-engaging and just repatriating them, that the business does much work in the background to understand how to leverage their strengths and put them into a well-suited position to get the best of their experience. MIrela, I know that you've done hundreds of assignments, and I'd like you, if you could, just to talk about the importance and how that looks, if you could, on the repatriation and that fit to find that position and how an employee can work and get some of that investment back for the organization.
Absolutely. And I would say, Jeff, that, thinking about repatriation is something that shouldn't be left to the last 90 days before you're due to come back. And I think it is a joint responsibility on both the part of HR management and the employee to actually, as they're setting out on the assignment, start thinking about where do we go from here? Understanding that, a 2-year assignment or a 3-year assignment can go really quickly. You spend the first year actually getting into it, the middle year delivering, and the third year is where those conversations and those thoughts need to start flowing. And we touched on this a little bit in our last session of how critical the home leave trips are to help the individual maintain those relationships, stay connected to the home country, and really start lobbying for themselves for what their return role is going to look like. And I will say it's not solely the responsibility of the employee. I think the HR partner or the resource manager, whatever, whoever that might be, that's responsible for the resources that are out there in the world on assignments, to really start having those conversations, to start planning. You said it really well, Jeff, in that, employees, as they leave, they're at a certain stage in their career, 2 or 3 years down the road, having gained that tremendous international experience and being exposed, are coming back a completely different employee with a set of very different priorities and ambitions and goals from an ongoing development perspective. So I think the success of an assignment isn't, did they just go out there and deliver on the objectives that were set out 3 years ago. It's a matter of how successful were we combined as an employee, self-serving, with their own career development in mind, and as a corporation, of bringing them back and actually having a role that's suitable for their current skills that they've gained over the course of the assignment, and really mitigating the risk of not having a role for them to return to, or just kind of like a placeholder role that they're not happy to go back to, and then running the risk of either having to proactively separate the employee because there's no opportunity to put them into, or the employee not being satisfied with really being asked to go back to a role that they outgrew as a result of the assignment. I think some companies are not doing the best job they could possibly do in this, because I think they're leaving the repatriation planning to the very last minute, and individuals are just not finding those opportunities that they need. And I've seen many situations where, unfortunately, the repatriation came with a severance package, and these individuals have taken the tremendous experience and the knowledge that they have developed to a competitor.
I think, that's so right. Anyone in business where we've seen multiple assignments, poor planning, and you really, you get exactly, or no planning, and you see the result of it. I really like you echoing what we talked about before, of having the HR business partner be there, not just driving it, because, these people have typically, when they're away on an assignment, are in elevated roles. So they can advocate for themselves. It's one of those things. But I really like the idea of having that HR business partner. It's like, having a cheerleader for you in your corner, so that they can remind the business on behalf of the employee and help edge them along. It's so important for the employee to have someone in their corner to really just make the business aware that they're there. Sometimes the business forgets, it's day-to-day life, operations go on. And so by having that awareness raised to them, we can better find a space for that employee in a role that works. The other thing that is important on this, excuse me, is that as the employee changes over time when they're out on assignment, That HR business partner and the continuity of that relationship, as well as the relationship that the employee has maintained through home visits and through engagement with HR, as well as the business should be able to perceive the changes in the employee's capabilities. And that's where the role development needs to be fluid. As we said, they're not coming back to the same role. And that's where the opportunity for the company, as well as the employee in the business section, can actually realize that return on investment. And if that's planned correctly, you're going to get a business where the business objectives have been met because the employee has been successful. And that's thanks to the pre-work that's gone on, and they've gone out country and they've been successful in their role. So they've delivered what they needed to do for the business. Now they've delivered what they've needed to do for themselves. So they're coming back more learned, more engaged, in an elevated state. Now, the thing that's missed, and this is on this role exploration and positioning, is if the company does not plan this, they miss out on the largest opportunity there is, and that's realizing the benefit from the investment in this employee.
Absolutely, Jeff. You know, you're 100% right. And it has been, it's sometimes disappointing to see that despite the employee's effort in those last 3 months, that due diligence was not done early on. And where I found success is that those home leave trips were utilized from a business perspective as much as they were for a personal perspective to reconnect. And I've also seen situations where the re-engagement of the home country HR partner and collaboration of that partner with the host country HR partner to really get to know again where that individual has grown to, what are they seeking, having that really open and honest conversation and doing that early. So I think when it's done right, it means that all of those relevant stakeholders, including the employee, him or herself, are engaged in those discussions really on, and they give themselves that long runway. Because if you imagine, particularly these people often being a little bit more senior or gaining a lot of traction and skills during their assignment, are coming back or hopefully into a more senior level roles. That's not always easily available. And so that's where that long runway to engage in those discussions. And I think the longer the assignment, the longer before the due return date that those conversations need to happen. So if it's a short-term assignment, maybe 6 months is the right time. If they've been out there for a year, 18 months. If they've been out there for 2 or 3 years, I think those conversations need to kick in at about the 12-month mark. What I think is also important that we have line of sight to when those repatriation dates are coming up. And with the use of fantastic technology that's available to us as the mobility function and team, we have an opportunity to actually flag those dates so that for whatever reason, the HR partners and the employees doesn't have it at top of mind. They're thinking it's still 12 months out. I think we need to kind of put in place those markers at that 12-month mark and send out reports to all of those relevant stakeholders and say, by the way, you've got 3 individuals that are coming close to repatriation. It's still 12 months out, but have their name at the top of your mind as you're having staffing discussions with your business leaders.
May I ask a question, MIrela and Jeff, about the relationship, the aspect of good relationship or any relationship between the assignee and the line manager, the direct reporting relationship? Sometimes that is not good, right? Or not as good as it should be, or not as communicative. And so the assignee feels, well, oh my God, what am I going to do? How should I behave? What should I do? Isn't that the role of Kirsten?
Well, yes, Ed, exactly. And we've seen cases, I can think of a fresh example where we actually had a country manager who had been pushed into this role and perhaps not vetted to the full extent. So the assignment starts, you've got an in-country manager who does not have the strengths required, or, that whole host of strengths. And so he's struggling on his own. So it's very difficult when you're struggling on your own to offer support that is much needed to the team. And so those team members are, somewhat adrift. They don't have someone who they feel is capable or feeling that they're, able to really advocate for them in a truthful way. And that is where the business partner comes in so strongly and is able to, bring awareness to that relationship or the missed opportunity there, but also they're able to circumvent and work around that break with the home country and really try and keep that employee engaged with the business that's going to actually be making the decision of where they ultimately re-land when they repatriate. So Kirsten's role is invaluable in that piece and that relationship in really just bridging that gap, but also helping to mend or better build that relationship with the in-country manager if things are askew, because that in itself is another employee, if they're struggling, needs the attention of HR and the business to get them on the right track. So, again, the more engaged you are and readily engaged, HR has a great role to play in this and identifying what gaps there may be, not on a technical perspective, but on that personal and driven perspective. And sometimes the business has a very difficult time understanding such a high importance of that socio piece, because if it's not right and there's other stressors, of course, the technical function is going to suffer as well.
Mm-hmm. I sometimes think that the business partner is in this perspective is kind of the agent for this individual, right? They're there to protect them. They're there to help foster opportunities. They're there to help network and facilitate introductions to managers, even outside of their normal business division, for example, because that next role may not necessarily be back in the same division under the same leadership and management. And the management and leadership may have well changed and turned over 1 or 2 times during their 3 years abroad anyways. So, it's the advocacy that you do for yourself. It's almost taking this repatriation and treating it as if you're out there unemployed and you're looking for your next job, and really leveraging the relationships you have already established that are solid and good.
What a great analogy.
Right?
That's terrific.
Yeah. Right. So yeah. I think it's a tremendous role that the HR partners have, but I think we have a role to play in that as the mobility leaders, as giving them those ideas, really also educating in our discussions with the expats, because often enough, we're the first to hear from the expat. I'm due to come back and no one has reached out to me. Like, how do I start this process? So I think we've seen it when it has been successful, and we have an obligation to share that and really maybe sometimes work with an HR partner that's never had an expat that's repatriating. Yeah. So it's really about doing it as a team and doing it together.
Absolutely. Michael, can you talk about some of that? I think that, MIrela and I have touched on the care and the attention that has to be put into the thought of this. But we're talking about winding down in the host location, and of course there's business pieces that we have to do, and we're ending relationships, and we're doing it. Can you talk about the work that as an RMC, how you undo everything that you've done, just to make sure that we're clear from the liability perspective, as well as anything that might be in the fringe?
For sure. And it's funny that MIrela said, you need to start thinking about some of these things right at the start of the assignment. Well, a good close down service, the practicalities of a close down service begins when you 3 years ago, when you moved in. Did you do a good move-in inspection when the assignee went into the property? Do we know the state of the wear and tear? Did we take photos? of the condition of the property. It may come as a surprise to some people that landlords the world over consider security deposits part of their income, if it's not treated, if we don't take care. So shutting down that, the giving proper notice, shutting down that property in a particular manner matters. A good walkthrough inspection with both the assignee and the landlord become very, very important. Sometimes these negotiations go on for weeks and weeks and weeks in order to get security deposits back and these sorts of things. So having someone there about sole eye, protecting the corporation, protecting the employee, getting the security deposits, not having any extra fees associated, having an expert on the ground help with that is very, very important. But there are all kinds of practical things to shut down other than the property. There will be local deregistration. It might be a residency deregistration. There could be a tax deregistration. All of these things have to occur. Sometimes you won't even be able to get your household goods out of the country if you do not properly deregister. And then there's the timing. The timing is important. They're still very busy at their job. They're busy talking to you guys. They're busy sorting out what returning looks like, but there's all kinds of practical things that they need to close down properly before they leave. It can go from the mundane, such as organizing donations and getting rid of garbage and organizing cleaning, but the timing of the closure of the bank is important as well. You will still have utilities coming out of that bank account. Can you put a forward request to close that account? Maybe you don't even want it closed because the easiest way to pay your tax bill next year will be through that account. So closing out an account might actually cause more problems than keeping it open. It all depends. But we're working with the families. We're getting the schooling papers for the children so they can go on to their next education experience and give the proper feedback, the information to the new school so that they can enroll in the proper and get the proper education they need. You need to advise doctors. You need to get prepared for the transmittal of your records. You won't be able to do it in country, but you'll be able to prepare for transmittal of your records when you get to back to the home country. You'll want to get prescriptions. Prescriptions for the first month that you're back, so you're taken care of. So all of these sorts of things become important. Driving records, getting your driving records so you can ease back into the driving in the home country. So all of these things they're not really as high a level as you've been talking, you and MIrela have been talking about, but they are the practical things on the ground that if they go wrong, it's going to kick back and hit the company.
It is amazing. It's just a myriad of all these things. And Michael, it's great to have you speaking to this in the detail of all of these things, because it does bring to mind all of these, they're seemingly small things that we do in our day-to-day life when we're casually along. But when we're in a foreign land, every one of these pieces is a task that you need assistance with,
Yep.
And you're talking about what you think may be mundane. And while you're doing that, and we're ready for the repatriation, that's when MIrela and myself are working with, assuming that, the HR business partners in stride and they're working with the employee. Now MIrela and I are in the background and we're working with HR operations in making sure that international payroll has got everything ready for the wind down. Our tax providers are prepared. They've got everything they need. We're making sure that the immigration permissions are changing over. We're not doing the renewals. To your point, art cards are being deregistered. So all of these pieces in the background, if we're doing it correctly, just as you are at your end, the employee, can potentially have what is seen as a somewhat seamless repatriation on that piece, which is important because if we've done our good work on both ends, so in country and in the host location on doing it, just like when the employee goes out, and this is why it's so important to get the end just the same as the beginning in correct form, is that that employee can then go in and re-engage in the home country with as little stress as possible, where their family is taken care of. And you know, MIrela, I'm sure you'll have a few pieces to add to this. So before we get into that cultural reintegration, I'd love your comments on that wind down and the work involved.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, Michael, you did a fantastic job of raising my anxiety level, because I think even though I live and breathe and I have done this for many years, I think we in HR can take for granted just how much needs to wind down at that personal level in terms of all of the registrations, all the items that you spoke to, all of the considerations. And we have to think that in some cases, people may leave out, you know, start off on their assignment alone. But in that journey, they gain a spouse, they gain children, and there's a brand new set of considerations that they need to be prepared for and plan for in terms of reintegrating into their new country. So, you know, we'll talk about that a little bit more as we continue the session. But there are so many things that the RMC and the destination services providers step in and provide support on, and we take it really for granted. So as we're talking about more the strategic reintegration, you and your team is doing a fantastic job of making it all appear seamless. And at the end of the day, how well have we delivered with that ROI is so dependent on absolutely every single piece of this huge effort that's undertaken by a large number of people that really need to be in sync, that need to partner together to make this the best experience possible from everyone involved. So I have to just say kudos to the RMCs, the destination services provider, who do an incredible job of making us look good, making all of this look so easy. But behind the scenes, it's really administrative. And it's extremely stressful for the individuals that are going through it. And in some cases, and I think you alluded to this, Jeff, they're still kind of delivering to like that very last hour and moment. Yeah. While often enough, if we've done our part of finding their next role, they've already started delivering in their next role back in the home country. So to have this army of support and SMEs behind the scenes managing this it takes tremendous effort, tremendous passion and care for the individuals and the employee. And you know, I applaud you and your team for all that you do, and RMCs that do this for our employees every single day and make it look easy.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic, because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Michael, if I can jump in here, guys, for a minute.
Sure.
So, Michael, that was an excellent portrayal of the numerous details and mental concerns that could overwhelm the transferee family. So, with a counselor approach that you seem to take, I would think that would be extremely valuable. I also want to bring up another point for MIrela and Jeff and Michael. About a coach, if you will, to help the assignee keep, while on assignment, a diary or a digest of what they're doing each day or each week, so they can prepare themselves to deal with a transition into the next role. I know it's not the mobility manager's job to do that, but I was just thinking of the role of leadership development and someone in the company, whether it's a Kirsten type of person, to help the transferee document what they're learning differently or new, and then applications of that in some other position somewhere.
That's such a brilliant idea, Ed, and you know, not exactly quite as you've identified as a way of doing it, but somewhat interesting is I've had situations or a couple of experiences where we've had HR leaders who really kind of understood that and had their HR hat on as they were on assignment and thought it would be really great to tell their story as they're on this journey through a blog or through a video interview. And I actually, in my last role, we completed a series of interviews for a variety of different individuals that spoke to what it was like to actually be selected and go off on an assignment. For some, it was short-term, for others, longer, some in a management leadership role and in a more junior level role. And they got a chance to actually document that journey and share that story, whether it was through an article that was made available at the company intranet or at the mobility site, or through a video that is, you know, promotional in some sense in terms of giving attention to mobility as a means of development and training, and illustrating that the company does support that kind of development and uses mobility as a tool to attract and retain and develop and grow their employees. But capturing that, I think, was also very introspective and very enlightening for the individuals actually citing their experience and sharing some of the challenges in the journey along the way and some of the successes they've gained and how exciting the experience and how tremendous it was and how it changed them as a person, it changed them as a professional, and the profound impact it also had on their family. So I think it's a brilliant idea to do it a little bit more even in the context of learning from a business perspective, where the next time we have an expat, we can give them almost like a toolkit of, you know, do's and don'ts and things to think about and things to focus on while you're on this journey. So fantastic suggestion.
It's terrific from really you know, I thought perspective, and you can just imagine how you could go back in the retrospective that you would have as an assignee and really see it. I think it'd be fantastic. One other thing that we did, actually, Kirsten and I had the opportunity to partner on. She took it, my input and the employee's input and the business's input is not a completely employee-centric case study, but was a playbook on two large groups of assignees that we had. One was in Korea and one was in Spain. And Korea got off to a very rocky start. For all sorts of reasons that we talked about earlier. That pre-work was not done, the diligence wasn't performed. And so, you know, fortunately, we're all smart enough to actually learn from that. So, I mean, kudos to us for that, because sometimes that doesn't happen. But we were able to really document what didn't work and what worked well. And then many of these from a mobility and an HR piece, we already knew. The business was not convinced that we had to hit every step on this. And that's sometimes about everything we've been talking about over the last 4 sessions, is really coaching the business and allowing them to understand how impactful missing out something that seems not so, not so substantial, just the huge impact that it can have on the success of the assignment. So in this playbook, we took our failures, we took our successes, because we were able to apply our successes to a Spain group that went out. We were doing some engineering with a huge group. And the success of that assignment in comparison to the one that was not handled in the really process oriented and really thoughtful oriented one that we had in Korea, where it was missed, the success was huge. We didn't have the problems that we'd had. And employees were actually able to understand, in having a copy of this, some of the things that we're going through. But the business, I think, in really lining it out, it's not just the what, but when you put it in a perspective where it's experiential from, past experiences of the business, past experiences of the employees, you can really help understand the why and how impactful it is. And if not anything, during these conversations we've had over the last weeks, the why here is really what we're stressing. It's how we do this, why we're doing it, and the opportunity to really change the impact of subsequent assignees and elevate that.
Excellent. Do you want to bring this to a close, or
I want to talk just a little bit. I just want to talk a little bit about cultural reintegration and how, from we're going to rely on a Michael for that, and how that gets covered off so that we have that sourced and allow the employee and their family to step into their home country again.
Yeah, it's not everyone out there might think, they actually might think we're going overboard by suggesting that there needs to be a cultural reintegration on the way back, but there really is a reverse culture shock, and that can actually send ripples through the company. The goal of repatriation, acculturation, is to help repatriating employees and their families successfully adjust and assimilate into work and life back in the old country. And it's like, who cares? The family's home, they're with friends and family, life's great, right? Well, no, the repatriation can be more concerning than the expatriation when they were going on a work assignment, when it was a bit of an adventure. And finding you don't want that person to walk out the door after they get back because of something that could have been within your control in terms of educating them about what they're going to go through when they do come back. You see, what happens overseas is that eventually we become accustomed to those new customs. They become part of us. We change, we adapt, we create new identities, so on and so forth. So if you're contemplating someone's return, you got to consider home has changed in the 3 years. Yeah. You have changed in the 3 years. You've adapted to another culture. Now you have to readapt. So often repatriates expect their home to be just the same as when they left. And it might be bigger, it might be smaller, it might be different. The old school's gone. All of those things have happened to make it different. When you're outside the country, things change. So the fabric of your community might change. Your relationships have possibly changed. Friends have actually moved on, or they've evolved in their thinking. You've evolved in your thinking in very, very different ways. You may not see eye to eye anymore. Relationships that were once strong may not be the same anymore. And there are 3 issues that can hit someone as they're coming back. There's a criticality. They can be critical of the home country and its norms and its values compared to something that they've grown accustomed to overseas. So that is going on in their head. There's a marginality issue that's going on. They feel isolated. I remember once listening in on someone from a high-tech company, and they were talking about an assignee that had gone back, and every day in the cafeteria, they were talking about their assignment, and HR actually had to pull them aside and say, you may want to tone that down. it's not going over it's not going over well. So how isolating is that, to be told that when this was your experience that your company sent you over on? So it's really quite astounding. And then there can be resistance, there can be withdrawal, there can be depression as they're finding out that what once was home is not the same anymore. You become discontented. And where is that blame going to land? It's going to land on your company if they don't understand what they're going through. So a lot of cultural reintegration is really helping them understand the full life cycle of that assignment and how they've changed, and that this is very normal to go through, and that there are tools in the toolkit to reintegrating and taking what you got from your assignment and working it into your life, and not feeling marginalized, not feeling critical of your home country, so on and so forth. So a very good cross-cultural reintegration is really, really important. And it is a big forgotten piece. It does not get used nearly as much as one would like. But if you've invested that much in the individual, it's a small price to pay.
Michael,
I'm sorry, MIrela. If I can just jump in, do companies allow for a counselor, psychological counselor, perhaps, to help the assignee and spouse or partner?
It's interesting. We had this discussion, and MIrela was making some really, really good points about cross-cultural and how it's changed over the years. And it's gone online, and cross-cultural going over is now more of a process rather than cram everything into someone's head in 2 days. I don't know that companies are providing psychologists. I think Jeff or MIrela could speak to that. But the same thing goes with cultural reintegration on the way back, is that these online tools are not just cramming information in your head in one day. They're there for you in an EAP fashion over the course of your reintegration.
We've had, sorry, MIrela, I'm going to get quiet here. I just wanted to say, yes, I've been fortunate to work for organizations where that psychologist, and we hope it to be the same psychologist who's been with that employee from the initial assessment, has been engaged with them over the life of their assignment. And so they're there for the employee when they land. And I can't think of a better way or a better method of support to have someone who's been with you, from the start, to help you land and make sure that, on your socio and your thought piece, you're aligned. Because Michael, I just think it's wonderful, the things that you've talked about, and how, as an employee, you're able to validate really the thoughts and the differences that you're experiencing, because they are not expected. You think you're just coming home to a norm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Ed, you asked the question that I was actually going to speak to, which is how critical it is, one, to remind employees that they not only have an opportunity through cross-cultural reintegration and training that we can easily, trigger and provide, but there's also the the employee service centers that are available to address any mental health issues that come up during the reintegration in the home country. And the piece that I think I alluded to in an earlier comment was, it may be that the employee is doing this the second or third or fourth time around. And they've learned how to reintegrate and adapt successfully in the home country. But the complexity comes in when, as I mentioned before, during the assignment, they've gained a significant other, partner, children. And we take for granted that the impact on those family members could actually be greater than on the employee, because they may be going to a country for the very first time. And I think few programs actually consider offering cultural training, formal cultural training, through online portals or live consultant support and assistance upon repatriation. And I think this discussion has given me some thought about how important it is to advocate for that, particularly because it has become a fairly inexpensive and immaterial investment, especially if you're working with organizations that have a flurry of online resources and tools and assessments and solutions and plans that can be made available at your fingertips. And I think how amazing would it be to say, upon repatriation, this is available to you. It's available to you and your family for 3 months. Let's say, for example, you may not need it for a full year, which is, what I would propose is available when you set out on your assignment. These are really insignificant and immaterial investments. We're talking about a couple of $100 that could make a huge difference in the success, the final success, because you don't just measure the success until that day where the assignment is over. Are you still retaining that employee 6 months, 12 months after they've returned? And are they in good shape mentally, physically, spiritually, and still continuing to deliver to the organization?
Excellent. I've learned so much from you guys.
Are you ready to go somewhere? Where would you like to go at? We're happy to send you.
I think I want to be an HR business partner.
I'm gonna have you close this out, because I think it's great that you've hosted for these sessions. But I just want to, and I know you're going to as well. Great working with MIrela, Michael, and Kirsten on this, and appreciate it. I think that what we've talked about here is useful, and that is really, that was my intent when I was thinking of this initially. And I can't think of better people to have joined. It's just been wonderful.
Michael, Deane, you just bring this maturity and this. Sorry. No, I'm not counting on your age here. No, but I mean your scope and the absolute detail of minutia that by itself. Whoever thinks about all this stuff,
well, I think
you need it.
What was great about this series was there's so much. I think, someone viewing this series gets to hear so much of the high level, highly strategic, long thought process behind these assignments that Jeff and Kirsten and MIrela brought. And then there's all these minutia, granular details that are going on at the exact same time as this strategic planning. There's a lot of moving parts.
Okay, so now what about the short-term assignments or the extended business trips replacing these longer-term assignments, Jeff?
We talked about that a little bit. We've talked about how what is available to be done virtually. Obviously, companies are exercising that, and I think that's a shift where it can be. But we talked about this, and Kirsten and I. When your home country is North America, and the assignment location is perhaps Asia somewhere, the geographical time difference makes it very difficult to do anything virtually. You're not engaged. You're always working 2 shifts instead of 1, concentrating on where you are. So I believe that, do we reimagine what a short-term versus a long-term looks like? We talked about that in the beginning as well. And that has to do, if we've defined the role and we found an employee who we think is nimble and is going to, provide the competence that we need in that role, we're going to look to accommodate. And I think that that's where mobility works with HR and the business to really think out what's going to work. Are we doing extended business travel? Are we doing a commuter assignment? Are we doing a short-term assignment? Are we doing a rotational assignment? We've got lots of tools that we can use and we can develop, but this comes to, so your final question on this, Ed, which is really cool, is the same question as we're asking right at the start here, which is always the same, and it's that thought. So let's talk about purpose. And once we've understood what the purpose is, then we can find out the most efficient way to do this, whether it's the business travel, extended business travel, full assignment, accompanied, unaccompanied, or rotational.
MIrela?
And I have to chime in because, your question got me thinking about that. We take for granted that we develop a really robust expat program with all of the supports and all of the things that we've talked about over the course of the last 4 weeks. But when you think about that frequent business traveler whose job is to really travel 80% of the time, supporting either the company internally or being a management consultant, supporting external clients for the organization, they have similar sets of challenges, but they might have very unique, different needs that need to be addressed in a very different way. Because often those individuals are not moving with the family. So we still have to address the fact that they're leaving family behind every Sunday and not coming home till Friday afternoon. And so I think as we're developing our programs, it's not a one-fit-all solution. The commuters have different challenges that we need to support and assist with a modified version of all of the destination services and things that we're providing to them. The extensive business traveler, frequent traveler, that is a road warrior that never gets off a plane, is in a different city pretty much every other week. They have a different set of challenges. And if the job of global mobility is to also support, administer, and manage that population, it's really critical that we're very holistic in the solutions that we provide, and we engage with just the right resources, vendors, suppliers to address the unique needs of that individual, because their profile could be slightly different.
Excellent. Jeff?
Well, I've said my hellos and goodbyes, and Ed, love you to wrap it up.
Okay, this is great. I've learned a hell of a lot, and I thank you, Michael, Deane, for this deep dive into destination management. MIrela, it's great to have you, and thank you for our initial time together was at the BMO conference that we did last year. Mm-hmm. And Jeff, we met at Finders Keepers, I think, and here we are. So it's been wonderful, and the people of mobility are golden. It's just great. It's been a life for me. And Michael, you and I started a business relationship last century, I think, with the All Points conventions, and God, that was a lot of fun back then. But but now it's evolved into an education, and it's still fun. Yeah. So let's do this again someday. And thanks for being on Global TV Talk Show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is cool.
Have a great day.
All right. Ciao.
It's been a pleasure. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Let's stay in touch. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.